When it comes to Ford, you'll immediately think of the muscular Mustang, the legendary F-150, or the milestones that changed the entire automotive industry. But behind that glory are the long downward spirals, the cars that Ford definitely doesn't want you to remember. From bizarre designs, underpowered engines, to explosive scandals, you won't believe these cars once bore the Ford logo. In this series, we'll be reopening the files on the 10 most forgettable failures of America's iconic car brand. And trust me, the very first name will leave you speechless. Number 1. 1958-1960, Ford Edsel. In 1957, Ford announced an entirely new model, the Edsel. The name Edsel was taken from Henry Ford's son, no small honor. They even created an entirely separate division within the company, just to develop it. With over $250 million invested, Ford hoped this would be the new king, wedging itself between Chevrolet and Buick in the market. In September, when the first car hit dealerships, thousands of eager buyers flocked to showrooms. But life didn't go as planned. The Edsel launched with a front-end design that looked like an upside-down toilet. Gear buttons placed right on the steering wheel, easy to confuse, and build quality was terrible since the cars were assembled at multiple different factories. It wasn't just technical flaws. The Edsel also debuted right as the US economy was slipping into recession, and consumers were tightening their budgets. The result? A historic flop. With less than 110,000 units sold in 3 years, Ford quietly pulled the plug on the name, and Edsel, from then on, became a symbol of the most expensive failure in American automotive history. And this is just the beginning. Number 2. 1961-1967, Ford Falcon Econoline Pickup. What would you think if the driver sat directly above the front axle and the steering wheel was practically right over the front wheels? That was the bizarre cab-over design of the Ford Falcon Econoline Pickup, a mini pickup truck developed from the compact Falcon line. Sounds innovative, right? But the problem was, the vehicle was seriously unbalanced. The entire engine's weight was placed up front, making the front end prone to tipping upward when heavily loaded. On top of that, there was no real front hood, so in a collision, the driver took the brunt of the impact. The suspension? Extremely rough, and the driving feel? Like riding inside a wobbly cookie tin. Though cheap and somewhat useful in urban settings, its dangerous design and lack of practicality led to the Econoline Pickup being phased out early. A clear lesson: being different doesn't always mean being better. Number 3. 1960-1963, Ford Falcon. The Falcon was the first compact car introduced by the Big Three of the American auto industry. They wanted to tap into the booming small car segment, going head-to-head with the Chevrolet Corvair and even imported models. Sounds like a smart move, but the base Falcon was just way too dull. Its 144cc engine produced only around 90 horsepower. Acceleration was turtle-like. The 3-speed manual gearbox felt dry and clunky, and the interior? So basic, it could have passed for a taxi. Sure, it was economical and easy to maintain, but it had zero personality. While the Corvair brought bold rear-engine innovation, the Falcon chose a path so safe, it became boring. The result? Buyers saw the Falcon as the car you bought when you had no other choice. Only when the Mustang was born, built on the Falcon's very chassis, did Ford finally turn the tables. As for the base model Falcon, it's a textbook example that playing it too safe is a risk in itself. Number 4. 1962-1964, Ford Fairlane 1.6. Ford once had high hopes for the Fairlane, a car that was neither too big nor too small, created to fill the gap between the Falcon and the Galaxie. They wanted it to be a strong contender against names like GM's, a Bodyline, the Plymouth Belvedere, and the AMC Rambler. But unfortunately, the version with the inline 6-cylinder engine was a total letdown, with just 101 horsepower, a stiff manual gearbox, and acceleration that felt like you were towing a water tank in the back. The design wasn't eye-catching enough, and the interior felt both dim and dull. You know that feeling when you're driving a car and there's just nothing that makes you want to take it for another spin? This was that car. Personally, I think, if it only offered a tiny step up from the Falcon and fell far short of the Mustang a few years later, then the Fairlane was truly a car stuck in the middle. How about you? Have you ever driven a car that felt not wrong, but definitely not right either? Drop a comment. I'm genuinely curious. Number 5. 1967-1969 Ford Thunderbird. The Thunderbird was once a symbol of elegance and sportiness in the 1950s. But by the late 60s, Ford decided to steer the model toward luxury transformation. And the result was a large, heavy coupe with a silhouette more like a limousine than a true sports car. This era's Thunderbird weighed nearly 2 tons, featured an odd 4-door body style, and even had suicide doors in the rear. Though it came with a powerful V8 engine, the driving experience was sluggish, steering feedback was vague, and the suspension prioritized comfort over precision. All of this alienated the very audience who once loved the Thunderbird, the sporty driving enthusiasts who used to be its most loyal fans. The Thunderbird of these years is a clear example of chasing the fake luxury trend and completely losing the sporty identity that originally made it famous. Number 6. 1960-1962 Ford Ranchero. The 1960-1962 generation of the Ranchero was developed on the Ford Falcon platform, and that turned out to be its biggest weakness. While the idea of creating a compact, practical pickup sounded timely, the reality was the Falcon platform was too weak to properly serve the function of a true pickup truck. The chassis was flimsy, with many rust-prone areas, especially on the floor, fenders, and door sills. The suspension was light-duty, and the inline-6 engine produced just 90 horsepower, making this Ranchero generation struggle with heavy loads, accelerate sluggishly, and feel unstable when carrying cargo. Meanwhile, the Chevrolet El Camino of the same era was stronger and more solid, while the Ranchero was often seen as a coupe disguised as a pickup. Ford quickly made improvements in later generations, but this first version, the one based on the Falcon, remained a forgettable product, unclear in its intended purpose, and leaving little impression among car enthusiasts. Number 7. 1964-1968 Ford Custom 500. The Ford Custom 500 was positioned as a budget-friendly sedan in the company's lineup, often used by government fleets, police departments, or as taxis. However, its civilian version, especially during the 1964 to 1968 period, had virtually no standout features to attract everyday consumers. The design was boxy and plain, the interior was stripped down to the bare minimum, and the base inline-6 engine was often criticized for lacking power when going uphill or carrying a full load. As a result, the driving experience felt dry, sluggish, and uninspiring. While a more powerful V8 was available as an option, most buyers of the lower trims ended up with a car that was basically good enough to get from A to B. In the meantime, rivals like the Chevy Impala and Pontiac Catalina were upping the game with more comfort and personality, leaving the Custom 500 to fade into the background. It existed as a practical tool, not as a car that delivered emotion or style. Number 8. 1965-1966 Ford Galaxie 500 40L. The Galaxie 500 40L was considered the premium sporty version of the Galaxie lineup in the mid-1960s. On paper, it came with a powerful V8 engine, a sporty interior, and a stylish 2-door coupe design. But in reality, this car was simply too heavy to deliver the driving experience people expected. Weighing over 1,800 kilograms, its acceleration was noticeably limited, while the suspension leaned more toward comfort than the precision a true performance car demands. Although buyers had the option of a 390 or 427 engine, most ended up with the weaker 289 or 352 versions, and the driving feel was barely different from a large mid-size sedan. The Galaxie 500 40 is a textbook case of a half-baked muscle car, full of promises on paper, but lacking sharpness in real-world performance, and quickly overshadowed by rivals like the GTO or Chevelle SS. Number 9. 1960-1964 Ford Country Squire. In the 1960s, the Country Squire was Ford's premium station wagon. Known for its faux wood paneling along the sides, it became a symbol of the luxury family car of its time. However, that very design gradually turned into a drawback as consumer tastes began to shift. Younger buyers saw the Country Squire as a relic of the older generation, bulky, sluggish, and inefficient. At nearly 5 meters in length and weighing close to 2 tons, the car was not only hard to maneuver in urban areas, but also consumed fuel at an alarming rate. Even with large displacement V8s, like the 352 or 390, it still couldn't compensate for the heavy driving feel, and the steering was slow and unresponsive. As compact wagons began to rise in popularity, the Country Squire slowly turned into a land yacht on the road, outdated, and no longer aligned with the evolving needs of the market. Number 10. 1968-1969 Ford Thunderbird Landau. The Thunderbird was once a symbol of distinction, but by the late 60s, Ford had taken the model far from its original sporty essence. The 1968-1969 Landau edition was the clearest proof. It featured a vinyl roof designed to mimic a convertible, more chrome trim and flashy lines, but all of it was just surface dressing for a heavy, unresponsive coupe. Though the powerful 429 V8 was available as an option, the car's near 2-ton weight, combined with a suspension tuned for comfort, made the driving experience dull and unexciting. Inside, the cabin was spacious, but the design was already starting to feel outdated, especially compared to modern rivals like the Buick Riviera or Cadillac Eldorado. This generation of the Thunderbird Landau not only lost its sporty identity, but clearly showed Ford's confusion in direction, a lackluster ending, for a nameplate that was once truly glorious. Even as a giant in the auto industry, Ford has had more than a few stumbles, but it's those very mistakes that have made their journey of growth more memorable than ever. Which car do you think was the worst failure on this list? Or is there another Ford model you believe deserves a spot here? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you enjoy behind-the-scenes stories from the automotive world, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next exciting video. See you again very soon.